I'd love to learn more about what early sales looked like at Sprinklr. Because as you said, you're kind of going from seed to Series A. Raji, the founder, was doing all the sales himself. And so what was that transition like from founder-led sales to you starting to do sales? Were you partnering with him on every call? Were you kind of just running your own book of business? Can you take us back to those early days?
Yeah, no. So it was great. I started a handful of their folks started very shortly thereafter, and they had hired a VP of sales that effectively started right around when I did. So Raji was phenomenal. Like working next to him was like getting an MBA by osmosis. Just watching. I think I was 27. It was one of those where I wish I had more experience right at the time, just so I really understood what I was soaking in. Hindsight's always 2020, but. Yeah, he was great. He just said, "Hey, go for it." They weren't really worried about me calling on the existing accounts. It was just go after net new, and go land logos and go figure it out. So it's effective what we did. We tried to figure out what worked, what didn't work, and we did our best.
And social was like this new thing at the time, right? Like what year was that? Because like I assume like social media management wasn't really an existing category. Like what was the state of kind of that market?
Totally. So this is 2012. This is Memorial Day of 2012, around then. And yeah, this is legitimately when there was always the joke of like, oh, the intern's running social. It wasn't really a joke. That was really what was taking place. And what was actually fascinating about it was, especially as time went on a little bit, you get into these rooms and get into these meetings with big Fortune 100, Fortune 500 brands, and you'd literally have the intern or first year, like first job out of college, first year, and you'd have, because social was so real time in nature, you'd have the CEO in the room at the same time. It was pretty wild, but we just made it up as we went. We were trying to we certainly had some product market fit with the big companies, but we were trying to now bring this to market. There was no brand, no one knew who we were. So we spent a lot of time trying to just get our name out there.
And it seems like you started with definitely, as you said, like bigger companies. I'd love to know, like, what was that early pitch? And was there a lot of education? Like, did you have to teach people about social and then teach them about social media management? Like, how did you sort of convince people that this was a problem that they needed to solve?
Yeah. So I looked at it. It's a good question. I looked at it as binary. Well, at first you start just trying to figure it out, right? Just try out the pitch, try different things. But after a little bit, you start to realize there was two conversations. There was the why Sprinklr conversation or the why social conversation. And at that point, the whole entire world is greenfield, right? Every account doesn't have this. So if I have to go evangelize why social, like why anything, period, probably not a great use of my time. So I really spent my time trying to figure out where are folks doing this, where there's some sophistication and strategy. Or there's more than a handful of people that are even thinking about social media within an organization. And that's where I went and spent my time in the why Sprinklr phase,
And what did that early product actually do? Yeah.
So in today's world, it's actually not that fundamentally different from what Sprinklr's core product is, which was just social media management. It was if you put social into three buckets: organic or owned social, earned, and paid. It was all things owned social media. It was before Facebook built the walled garden, right? None of that existed, right? So it was people, we would go explain it. Actually, it was one of those where we'd go to these trade shows and I used to explain to people, because a lot of what Sprinklr did was it was helping people post things on social media, giving them automation to do that. And there was permissions and calendars and monitoring and reporting. But I would explain to people, it's like the pipes and plumbing for how you operate social media for a big brand. Some understood it, some certainly did it, but we were really competing against, at the time, like Radian6, which did some listening, which was bought by Salesforce not long after I joined. It was competing against Buddy Media. If you remember, Saplets was a thing, or these things on Facebook, and then Hootsuite. So I would go to these trade shows and people would go, "Oh, so you're like Hootsuite?" And I'm like, "Sort of." Or you're like Buddy Media? Sort of. I'd say, "Oh no, we are Radian6 plus Buddy Media plus Hootsuite all in one with like reporting and governance." They'd go, "Oh, okay, interesting."
Why do you think it resonated more with like enterprise buyers versus SMB? Like, why did you deliberately go after kind of that more upmarket segment? Was it just like the contract sizes are more appealing and that was kind of the answer, or did they feel the pain more? Yeah.
I think in Raji's world, he saw this as he was in the email space before, and I think he saw this as an enterprise problem, and that most companies would start with the SMB or start small. And he's like, this social is really complex. social media is not just one channel like email, it's many channels. It's Facebook and Twitter, and then it's Instagram, and well, now it's Instagram and TikTok and Reddit, and there's dozens, right? And I think he realized the complexity of this, and the real need was going to be for at scale, when these big companies start to really get into this, they're going to need something that's purpose built for the large enterprise. And 1,000% his vision was spot on and accurate. That dude was very much correct.
And you were telling me about how John McMahon was on the board of Sprinklr in the early days, and he's an absolute sales legend. Can you kind of share the story?
Yeah. So McMahon was on the board or was an advisor to Sprinklr. I forget which one. And I remember we were at this. I had sold print before this, so I'm like 2 months into my software sales career. And we're at this offsite in Westchester in this like place, this conference center, time forgot. It's like this wood paneled place from the 80s. And there's the entire Sprinklr US based team, the sales team. Basically, there was, I don't know, 25 of us, like everyone that was in the US was there. And McMahon starts training everyone on MedPick. And I remember he's a tall guy, he's imposing, big energy, you know. And I remember him just walking over, stalking, big U-shaped room. I remember him stalking over to me and saying, "Oh, like, what's E?" And I remember saying economic buyer, and he asked me a couple follow-ups or whatever it was, and I didn't have the answer. And then he came back to me again and he was like, "So what's the answer now?" I remember I just blacked out. Still to this day, that moment gives me like agita and you know, like, oh God, please never put me back in that scenario again. Though I've definitely had plenty of conversations with him afterwards in the years following, you know.
Yeah, I've never met him myself, but I've listened to him on some YouTube and podcasts and stuff. And there's like a certain level of intensity about that guy where I'm like, oh wow, you must have been really hardcore to work for. And I see why he's like so successful as a sales leader.
And he's a bit more chill now. And actually, it's funny. So McMahon was on our board, and then we were pretty early with Force Management with John Kaplan. So I actually had the fortune of taking that message from him twice. So being able to, it's like, I don't know, a fun little fact of like, those are two big names in our world and our space, but learning what they do and what they've brought to bear to the market from them directly is a cool little thing to say.